Hi, I'm Charles with AniCap. The story begins as a kid gets by his stepfather for taking too long to eat and for looking like an evil little brat. The kid apologizes profusely, but his father just keeps him, and his mother sits nearby without caring. This is a dream from the past of our protagonist named Memori, and he wakes up to find his class president getting teased. The bully is Oyamada, and he refuses to give class president Ayaka her book back. Oyamada teases her more by reading some of the romance novel to everyone, and all the other students just ignore the bullying. The class is on a field trip, and Memori can't help but notice how all his classmates are just keeping their heads down to ignore the bullying, while the class elites laugh away. The teacher, meanwhile, doesn't really care about anything, and just sleeps the entire time. Memori thinks he might look pretty cool if he intervened, but he remembers that he's just a nobody, and he wouldn't accomplish anything. Ayaka eventually gets really frustrated, so Memori surprisingly stands up to Oyamada and tells him to give Ayaka her book back. Oyamada is impressed that Memori is finally standing up for something, but he still refuses to give the book back, and now he wants to pick on Memori as well. Just then, one of the elites named Kirihara tells Oyamada to stop messing around because he is repulsed by all the arguing. Everyone thinks Kirihara is really cool for taking command of the situation, and Oyamada apologizes to Ayaka. Oyamada is still annoyed about Memori standing up to him, so he starts picking on the quiet kid in class. Finally, the teacher tells him to stop and explains that Oyamada can bully people when he's not the teacher. Memori actually agrees with Oyamada because standing up like that isn't like him at all, and he assumes that he only took action because of the dream he had. Just then, all the students are shocked as they are teleported to a strange place. Some lady calls them heroes from another world and introduces herself as a goddess named Vicious. She explains that in her world, whenever the Great Demon Empire appears, they summon heroes from another world. The Demon Empire was defeated by heroes 200 years ago, but the terrifying evil has just resurfaced. These students are heroes to her, so she asks them to lend her their power. The students don't believe that they have been transported to a different world and just assume that they are dreaming. They start to think that it's just a prank, or even worse, they may have all lost their lives in a car crash. Everyone begins to panic, but the teacher tries to calm them down by pointing out that he is there. He is useless though, and just says that they should listen to the goddess. Memori takes a look around at all the old stuff, and that coupled with the golden-eyed goddess makes him believe that they really are in some other world. Kirihara wonders what will happen if they don't agree to fight the Demon Empire, so the goddess reveals that they won't be able to return to their world. The only way to do the reverse summoning ritual is by using a special element known as the Demon King's essence, and there are only two known ways to obtain it. One is by obtaining the heart of the Demon King, and the other is by collecting the Demon King's essence that is released upon the defeat of the Demon King, and putting it into the crystal in a necklace. Oyamada gets annoyed about being forced to fight the Demon Empire, but the goddess begs for their help as they are the heroes of salvation. Ayaka points out that they are just normal humans and pretty far from being heroes. The goddess assures them that they have powers that others do not possess, but Memori can't help but think that something isn't right. Oyamada is sick of the prank already, and Memori realizes that the goddess is what is upsetting him. Just then, the students are horrified when a prisoner is brought out to be eaten by a monster. The goddess eviscerates the monster with a fire spell, but the students are still in denial and just want to believe that her attack was CGI. The goddess changes the subject and declares that it's time to reveal the hidden skills of all the students. All the students take turns touching a crystal ball, and when it lights up, it means that they have a special ability. The summoners are shocked when Oyamada's light grows brightly, and it means that he has an incredible power. Oyamada changes his mind on the entire situation, and now thinks that being a hero sounds great. Kirihara's up next, and the sorcerers can't believe what they see when his power shatters the crystal ball. This means that he is a S class, which is the ultimate rank. Oyamada is an A class, so he points out how Kirihara is better than everyone, no matter what world they are in. Ayaka is an S-class hero as well, and the goddess is shocked when they find that there is a third S rank among the heroes. Normally they are lucky to just get one, so she declares that this is the best summoning ever. Memori is next, and he doesn't know what it means when he makes the crystal glow purple. He also notices that his glow is the weakest out of everyone. Memori wants to know what class he is, but the goddess just ignores him. Memori realizes that he's a no one again, just like in his old world, and he decides that he's fine with it. Just then, the quiet kid in the class makes the crystal glow with a black color. The goddess explains that this has only happened once before, when the dark hero touched the crystal, and he ended up being one of the strongest A-rank heroes of all. The quiet kid laughs like a maniac, and declares that he knew his time would come soon. Afterwards, the goddess shows everyone how to check their stats. Memori notices that his stats seem pretty low, and he has a unique skill called Inflict Status Ailments. Unique skills can only be used by the individual that has them, and the heroes can awaken more later. Oyamata gets tired of the explaining, and he wants to start doing hero stuff. The teacher tells him to be more respectful to the goddess, but Oyamata tells him to quiet down because the teacher is only a D-class hero. The goddess then declares that there's only one ritual left to do, and she shockingly calls on Memori to step forward. Memori has no clue why, so the goddess explains that he's the lowest rank of all the heroes that have been summoned, and he is an E-class. Past experience has taught the summoners that the weakest hero always holds back the others. Because of this, they decided to start getting rid of the weakest hero every time they did a summoning. Eventually though, this started scaring the other heroes, so the summoners decided to do something different instead. They decided to grant even the lowest ranked hero one chance to survive. They put them to the test by teleporting the weakest hero to some ruins. If they survive and reach the surface, then they are allowed to live freely. Memori wonders how dangerous the ruins are, but no one really knows. They have sent countless criminals and heroes to the ruins, but none have returned. These ruins are called the Ruins of Disposal. Memori tries to get out of it by explaining that he has a unique skill, but the goddess explains that status ailment skills like his are pretty useless. They have a low success rate, and even when they work they don't do much, and their duration is too short. The goddess points out that his stats are also really low, and even if he levels up, they won't improve much. Memori defends himself by pointing out how unfair it is to have been summoned only to be punished, but Kirihara tells him to just go already. All the others tell him to hurry up as well, but Memori feels a bit better when the kid named Yasu wonders if he is okay. Yasu's the quiet kid in class, and he was always kind to Memori. Things have changed though, so Yasu reminds Memori that he is the lowest rank. Yasu refuses to talk to such a low rank, and he calls Memori Mr. Trash Hero. Memori couldn't feel any worse, and the goddess begins the ritual. Every hero is granted a unique item when they are summoned, but Memori's is some pathetic looking leather bag. The gem on the bag will glow when magic is poured into it, but that's all it does. Just then, Ayaka surprisingly stands up for Memori, but the goddess makes her pay by knocking her out. The goddess tells everyone to forget Memori because he is a goner. She considers the heroes to all be winners, and she tells them to watch the tragic fate that awaits losers like Memori. Memori finally shows some determination as he becomes furious and uses a paralyzation spell on the goddess. It doesn't work though when she reveals that as a goddess, she has a dispel barrier active constantly. It provides total defense against status ailment spells. She bids farewell to the trash hero, but everyone is stunned when Kirihara uses an attack spell. He apologizes though because he was just testing it out. The ritual continues, and everyone is just glad that their time won't be wasted anymore. The goddess wonders if Memori has any last words, but he just begins to cry. Just then, we see Memori talking to his younger self. He is sobbing, and his other self tells him that no matter how much he represses it and pretends to be a harmless person, he won't be able to hide his true self forever. He tells himself to show everyone his true colors and to show them the true self that he has been suppressing the entire time. Memori's true self is finally revealed when he ditches his weak persona and he starts cursing at the goddess. Everyone is shocked, and Memori declares that if he makes it back alive, they all better be ready for him. Memori is teleported to the ruins, but it's pitch black, so he pours magic into the gem and begins exploring. Just then, Memori barely manages to dodge an attack from a monster, and he runs for his life. Memori shivers as he runs, because he can tell that the gap in power between him and this monster is huge. Memori is terrified, and he tries to hide the glowing gem because he thinks it's what's attracting the beast. As he runs, Memori realizes that he isn't actually afraid. The emotion he is feeling is frustration. He has no weapons, and all his stats are garbage. His skill is also useless, so Memori determines that this is where his life ends. However, out of nowhere, Memori finds some determination. He declares that he wants power, and uses a paralyzed spell to stop the terrifying monster right in its tracks. The surprised Memori runs for his life, and thinks about how the goddess said that status ailment skills rarely worked. Memori wonders if it was a miracle, but his attention quickly turns to the new monster in front of him. Memori can feel its hostility, and it's overwhelming. Memori wants to live though, and he surprises himself when his paralyzed skill works again. This makes him realize that using his skill the first time wasn't just a miracle, and he begins to wonder if his ability is something completely different from the magic in this world. Memori's all out of the boost the heroes were given, and he barely has any of his own magic power left. He fears that it won't be enough to use his skill, but he's surprised when he's able to cast a poison spell on the monster. His success rate seems to be really high, and it doesn't even look like the monster's rank matters. The duration seems to be pretty long as well, and Memori tells the monster not to be upset with him because it was trying to take his life too. Memori is completely out of magic power now, so he wonders what will happen if he tries to use his status ailment skill again. Just then, the monster from before reappears, and Memori wonders if someone will show up to rescue him like in the movies. However, he thinks about how everyone treated him so poorly earlier, and he remembers how he was beaten as a child. Memori's years of frustration reaches its peak, and he realizes that he's just a background character, so no one is coming to rescue him. Memori knows that he can't rely on others, so his only option is to fight to survive. Memori's inner self wants to conquer everything, so he declares that his fight for survival starts now. Memori uses Paralyze on the beast, but it doesn't work, so his system explains that he cannot apply the same skill to a target repeatedly. He desperately searches for another ability and ends up putting the monster to sleep. Memori can't spam the same skill on the same target, but he can stack multiple effects, so he finishes the monster off with poison. Memori's feeling pretty fatigued, so he realizes that consuming his natural magic power must be getting to him. Just then, Memori is horrified as a swarm of monsters appear before him. Memori determines that he will have to go all out and risk using all his magic power if he wants to survive, so he uses Paralyze over and over again. It works, but he's getting dangerously close to being completely out of MP. He's beginning to faint, and things get worse as even more monsters arrive. Memori realizes that he can't worry about how much magic power he has left, so he uses Paralyze several more times. It keeps working, but there are several more monsters left, and Memori is at his limit. Memori refuses to just give up and tries to squeeze out one more attack. It's not looking too good, but Memori receives a stroke of luck as he just happens to level up. His magic power is restored, so he quickly uses Paralyze again, just in time to save his own life. Memori realizes that he got a huge burst of experience from that last monster just now losing its life, and he gets excited because this means he can fight again. He uses Paralyze repeatedly, and the skill eventually rises to level 2. Memori wonders how the leveling system works, but he quickly realizes that he needs to pay attention to the battle. Just then, Memori notices that he can now target multiple opponents at once, so he paralyzes a ton of monsters. Memori determines that the goddess might be the only thing his unique skill doesn't work on, because his success rate in the Ruins of Disposal has been 100%. There are no target marks on the monsters further back, so this means that his status ailment skill has a limited range. Memori then goes through and poisons the paralyzed monsters. They seem pretty harmless now, and Memori just sees them as experience points this way. Memori checks his stats, and it shows that everything multiplies when he levels up. His starting MP was high already, and it's increasing dramatically. Just then, all the monsters begin falling victim to Memori's poison, and he levels up several times. He puts several others to sleep, and his sleep skill rises to level 2. Memori levels up even more when more monsters collapse, and he becomes confident that he can eliminate any monsters that appear. Memori prepares to continue the battle, but he is shocked when the monsters simply run away from him. Memori then finds something to wear off a corpse and decides that he needs to find food and water. His search doesn't find anything, so he decides that he will try and eat the monsters. His poison skill has worn off, so they should be safe to eat. The monster's skin turns out to be too hard to cut through, so Memori decides to slice out its eye. It doesn't look appetizing at all, and it's even worse when he bites into it. He just ends up coughing it up, and Memori wonders if the monster's body is just filled with poison. Things are getting pretty bad, and Memori determines that this place really is made to end the life of anyone thrown in it. Memori is starving, but he notices that the light on his bag has changed color. It's heavier than usual, and Memori is shocked when he finds soda and some jerky inside of it. Soda has never tasted so good, and Memori digs into the food as well. He doesn't know how his bag works, and he doesn't know if it will produce food again, but he's grateful that it happened. A while later, we see that Memori has just finished taking on a giant army of monsters. They are paralyzed, and now he's just waiting for his poison to take effect. Memori sits atop a giant dragon and determines that it will be any second now. Just then, the army of monsters start to collapse, and Memori begins leveling up even more. He acknowledges just how gruesome the sight is and begins to tear up. Just then, Memori has a memory from his childhood where he dreamed about getting revenge. Memori knew that he would have to eliminate his father before he eliminated him. Luckily for Memori, his aunt and uncle eventually took him in, and they gave him some normalcy with the warmth of family. They taught him kindness and empathy, and Memori thought that he had managed to become like them. However, Memori feels nothing now, and he's not even shaking in terror over taking so many lives. Memori is starting to scare himself, but decides to just accept who he is now. Memori buries his old self and leaves it behind as he now accepts his new self. Memori then easily wrecks an eye monster, and he pours magic into a gem next to a mysterious door. The door opens, and he finds that 2 people had taken their lives inside the room. Memori is shocked when he finds all the gems they had on them, and he assumes that he might need them when he returns to the surface. Memori apologizes to the pair for taking their gems, and he goes to explore the other rooms. After checking a couple hundred of them, Memori finds a room that is taking a lot more of his magic power than the others. When he gets inside the room, he finds another corpse, and this one left a letter. This person's name was Anglin, and he was known as the Hero of Darkness. Memori remembers that the goddess brought this guy up as the strongest of all heroes. His letter reveals that the goddess Vicious sent him there by force. He was no longer needed, and they just considered him an eyesore. He suspected that he would perish soon in this prison, so he left something behind in case anyone ever found him. Memori curses the goddess because she said the Demon Empire was evil, but she is much worse. Memori doesn't think he's much different though, because he just wants revenge and doesn't care about saving the world. Memori finds what the Dark Hero left behind, and it's a book on the forbidden arts. It's filled with recipes for magical items and weapons. Memori also finds a scroll of forbidden magic, but he can't read the writing. The famous mage went through the effort to hide it, so Memori determines that it must be a powerful spell. If he can decipher it, then it might be an ace in the hole against the goddess. Just then, Memori is shocked as one bloody page warns about the Soul Eater. It's the being that took everyone's life in the ruins. Memori continues exploring and finds a door that seems like it won't open without something being put inside a locking mechanism. Memori determines that it's the exit to the surface, but this also makes him realize that the Soul Eater must be nearby. It must be pretty dangerous, as even the great hero couldn't defeat it. Memori has raised his level as much as he could up until now, and he just hopes that he can defeat it with this skill. Nearby, he finds a face and determines that the orb in its head must be what he needs to open the final door. This face is clearly the Soul Eater, as he can't even move near it without it shooting him. The Soul Eater doesn't leave any openings, but he needs the orb off its head to escape, so Memori will have to risk his life to get it. Memori has to speak a skill name to activate his inflict status ailment, and it has to be loud enough too. There is no time to think though, as the Soul Eater begins moving on its own. This monster is what repelled the strongest hero, and it's the reason for the 0 survival rate in the ruins. This beast definitely rules the ruins, which means that this will be Memori's final fight for his life in the ruins of disposal. Outside, we see that someone has appeared to wait by the ruins. Inside, Memori is surprised that the Soul Eater isn't going after him, and it starts puking something out. This substance turns into disgusting monsters, and Memori realizes that the Soul Eater is showing him how its victims looked just before losing their lives. The Soul Eater clearly wants to see how he reacts, and Memori determines that this is how it entertains itself. Just then, the Soul Eater reveals itself to Memori with a loud scream, and Memori must paralyze the goo monsters. Memori must poison them next, but he can't get himself to do it because they remind him of the people that lost their lives. Memori declares that he's nothing like this monster because he could never use human souls as toys. He can't use his poison on things that look like humans, and Memori declares that he is still a human himself. The Soul Eater seems amused by how much it tortures him, so it creates more of the creatures. Memori tells them to stay back, and he can tell that the Soul Eater is really enjoying his despair. The horrified Memori begs for the creatures to get away, and the Soul Eater just laughs like a maniac. Memori is completely hopeless now, and he begs for someone to save him. Memori can tell that the Soul Eater is reaching peak enjoyment, so he shockingly completely changes his composure, and he paralyzes the Soul Eater. Memori explains that he could tell that it was the best moment of the Soul Eater's life. It had found its ultimate prey that it could torture for max enjoyment. However, this meant that it let its guard down, and it wasn't able to notice that Memori never once lowered his left arm. The beast collapses from paralyzation, and Memori explains the one fatal flaw possessed by those that are arrogant in their strength. The moment they convince themselves that victory is inevitable is the same moment they give rise to their greatest foe, and that is overconfidence. Memori's paralyzed skill rises to level 3, and he reveals that he was just acting the entire time. He then explains that after being taken in by his aunt and uncle, he tried his best to become harmless. Memori tried to become normal, and he tried to become kind. He even managed to fool himself, and ultimately forgot who he really was. However, the kind background character that he became clearly still had a lot of hostility deep down. Memori poisons the soul monsters and explains that he felt nothing towards them when the beast created them. He's just meeting bloodlust with bloodlust and ending their lives. Memori had the lowest stats to ever enter the dungeon, but he's grateful for it because it means that he was underestimated, and it is what allowed him to survive. As the Soul Eater writhes in pain, Memori mocks it for losing to a weak human that was sent to the dungeon to be disposed of. The Soul Eater desperately tries to get away, but this just helps Memori learn that his paralyzed skill causes additional damage when his victim tries to move. Memori finally poisons the Soul Eater, and the skill rises to level 3. Memori puts an end to the fight with his sleep spell, and the souls that the Soul Eater was using appear to thank Memori. They were watching him throughout his time in the ruins, and the couple hopes that he will make good use of their gems. Most importantly, they thank him for defeating the Soul Eater. The Dark Hero is there as well, and he tells Memori to get revenge on the goddess. Memori knows that he isn't obligated to, but he wants revenge against the goddess for himself. Memori takes the orb from the Soul Eater and uses it to open the exit door, so he says goodbye to the ruins. Outside, we see that students are eliminating monsters so they can gain experience points. Oyamata chases a wolf, and Kiriharu is pleased with his progress as he reaches level 18. The once quiet kid now watches a monster scream in agony, and Yasu laughs like a maniac. Some girl named Asagi intimidates another girl and expresses concerns that their class is probably going to fall apart soon. They have a lot of big egos, and being assigned classes hasn't helped. Asagi is sure that the students will start to split into factions, so she wants this timid girl in her group. This girl is only a D rank, so there's no way she will make it into Kiriharu's group, and Asagi predicts that Ayaka won't live long enough to form her own group. The timid girl's name is Kobato, and Asagi tells her that she will soon find herself not fitting in anywhere if she doesn't join Asagi's group. Asagi believes that if they defeat the Demon Empire and make it back to their world, then what they do in this world might benefit them. It turns out that the goddess has assigned a test to the students that requires them to eliminate monsters. Kobato hasn't completed the assignment, so Asagi has some girls bring out a monster to help Kobato. Kobato is hesitant, but Asagi reminds her that she will be disposed of like Memori if she doesn't eliminate the monster. Kobato is horrified, but she has no other choice, so she slays the monster. Asagi congratulates her on passing the test and announces that Kobato has officially become a member of her group. Kobato feels absolutely horrible, and she remembers a time when Memori rescued an injured cat. Kobato feels horrible after eliminating the creature, and she apologizes as there was nothing she could do. Elsewhere, Ayaka regains consciousness, and she feels the pain from when she was punched by the goddess. Ayaka goes to speak with the goddess about Memori, but the goddess explains that there's nothing that can be done. The ritual to dispose of the weakest heroes is a firm policy of the kingdom, and the goddess pretends to be remorseful as there is nothing she can do. Ayaka is shocked though when the goddess reveals that the ritual is still ongoing. While Ayaka was sleeping the days away, all the other students departed on a test to determine if they can eliminate a monster. Several have already failed though, and they have been disqualified. The goddess continues to act sad about it all as she explains that those who cannot fulfill their duty as heroes must take their leave. Ayaka expresses her displeasure about how the students are being handled, but the goddess reminds her that they must dispose of those that are worthless. Ayaka reminds the goddess that she is an S-class hero and declares that she will do her duty to make up for the students who couldn't clear the goddess's test. However, in return, she wants the goddess to call off their disposal. The goddess accepts and apologizes for punching her earlier. She excuses it by saying that she had to calm Ayaka down from her hysterics, but now she wants them to get along. In the dark forest, the girl that was outside of the ruins runs from some pursuers. The sword god named Maggots and his group are close to catching her, and we learn that they are known as the Holy Watchers. Memori finally returns to the surface and looks at his stats. He learns that he can dismiss paralyze at will, and he can make his poison non-lethal. This means that he will be able to avoid eliminating targets that way. Memori decides that he needs to find a sword and someone to act as a tank to handle the front line for him. Just then, Memori finds some slimes, and the group seems to be picking on one of their own. Memori hopes that the one getting bullied will stick up for itself, but there's no hope for him as he is severely outnumbered. Memori feels bad for the little guy, but he is shocked when it pushes his bullies back. Memori intervenes to paralyze and poison the bullies, and he notices that he can change the settings on his abilities. He dismisses the effects and tells the bullies to scram, leaving only the little slime. Memori leaves it paralyzed, and he tells it that he was really impressed by how it stood up for itself. Memori then tells it not to attack him, and he sets it free. Memori says farewell to the little slime, but it just keeps following him through the forest. Memori can tell that it's an outcast just like him, and it clearly plans to keep following him. Nearby, the princess is exhausted from running away, and she realizes that this is how the Holy Watchers do their hunting. Back with Memori, we see that he has teamed up with the slime, and he's using it to watch his back. Memori reads the book Anglin left behind, and he learns about an experiment to strengthen monsters. They are forbidden arts, and it even describes how to craft a solution to enhance slimes. Memori makes it very clear to the slime that he's on a quest for revenge, so following him will mean that this is their goal. Memori asks the slime if it's okay with that, and the slime is totally on board. Memori names it Piggy Maru, and the little slime has no issue with it. Memori is determined to get his revenge by any means possible, so he won't hesitate to use forbidden magic and arts. Elsewhere, the princess realizes that she won't be able to escape the Holy Watchers, so she decides to use something she didn't want to. She offers her sleep as a sacrifice, and after a short incantation, she transforms into what she calls a spirit regalia. Nearby, the Holy Watchers run into Memori, and they decide to rob him. Maggots would rather test his new sword on Memori, so the others tell him to make it quick because they have to go after the princess again. These guys say some pretty disgusting stuff about what they're going to do to the princess and any other girl they find, so Memori gets upset. They notice Memori backing away from fear, so Memori starts begging for his life. Maggots goes to end Memori's life, but everyone is shocked when Memori paralyzes him. Memori's glad to see that his status ailment skill is effective on humans, and he tells the thugs that they're not even close to being as intimidating as the monsters in the ruins. Memori isn't actually afraid of these guys at all, so he calls them scumbags. Piggy Maru is upset as well, and Memori decides that he won't be bothered if he ends the thugs' lives. He has already decided that from now on, he will meet bloodlust with bloodlust, which means he's prepared to take human lives if he has to. The thugs realize how terrifying Memori is, but it's too late as Memori poisons them. Memori can sense someone else nearby, and we see that the princess is getting nervous. She no longer senses the Holy Watchers, so she fears that they might be planning something. Just then, she is startled as she senses a different person. Their presence isn't terribly strong, but it's very unsettling, and even the spirits are afraid of them. Just then, the princess attacks, but Memori appears behind her and paralyzes her. Memori sensed her intent to attack, but he sensed something else in her and became curious. He's only keeping her paralyzed as a precaution, so she wonders what he wants with her. Memori simply explains that he isn't from this area, so he wants her to fill him in. He will allow her to move her mouth, but he warns that he will paralyze her again if she tries anything fishy. In reality though, Memori cannot stack paralyze, and he's just bluffing. Memori allows her to move her mouth only, as he's still skeptical of her. He has been through a lot, so he doesn't trust strangers so much. The princess agrees to answer his questions, but first she wants to know where the group of 4 men are. She is shocked to hear that Memori eliminated them, so he wonders if they were her friends. Her shock is for a different reason though, so she explains that those 4 guys were the Holy Watchers. They were very powerful, so she wonders if Memori had allies helping him. Memori refers to Piggymaru when he says he has one ally, but he doesn't tell her anything about him. The princess didn't sense any falsehood when Memori answered her question, so she decides to answer his questions as honestly as she can. She is also grateful for him saving her life, so Memori explains that she doesn't seem like a bad person. They both agree not to pry too deeply into each other's lives, so Memori begins with his questions. The princess reveals that the forest they are in is south of the kingdom, and Memori's next question is about the scroll he found. The princess can tell that it's an ancient and unique script, but she can't read the writing. She does know someone that might be able to read it, and this person is a witch. This witch possessed such vast knowledge of the forbidden in this world that she was deemed dangerous. Memori would like to meet with her, but she can only be found in the land of the golden-eyed monsters. The only problem is that this place is incredibly dangerous. The princess doesn't feel like she has repaid Memori enough for saving her life, but Memori says that they are even. The princess is really nice, and she reminds Memori of his aunt, who was too nice for her own good. Memori tells her that the paralyzation will wear off in a couple minutes, but he can't guarantee her safety in the meantime. The princess is fine with it, so Memori wishes her safe travels and he leaves. He explains to Piggymaru that he doesn't take pleasure in ending lives, so he will only do so within his own rules. Memori can't be sure that the girl won't attack him after she is freed, so he's counting on Piggymaru to watch his back. Thanks for watching my recap. Subscribe to the channel to help us reach 700,000 subscribers.